Welcome back to the Eye of Jupiter Live. I am your host, Tom Franklin, and today we have my good buddy Fisher of Spam, and he's going to talk about exorcisms and dogmen. I don't know how they relate and connect, but I'm sure he's going to make sure that we can follow that train of thought. If you keep finding yourself coming back to the Eye of Jupiter podcast, please do me a favor, go over and like and subscribe to the channel. It's a little bit of help on your end, does a big deal for me on this end. Also, you can also go over here to my Facebook page. Let me go ahead and close that for you. My Facebook page, you can go over and become a member. So, I am also to be found on Rumble. I'm also to be found on Spotify, and keep coming here every week. On Wednesdays, we have our lives at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and every Friday at 3:30 Mountain Time, sometimes a year, and sometimes Central, depending what time of the year it is, because Mexico does not have daylight savings time. Well, that's enough of that. Let me go ahead and remove some of this stuff. Stop screen. Boom. Okay, I'm still learning all this at the same time. It's going to be every time I try to up the ante on how well I do this. Anywho, without any further ado, let's welcome to the Eye of Jupiter podcast, Fisher of Spam.
Hi.
Hey.
What's up, everybody?
What's up,
What
dude?
you doing?
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Somebody fell out. He had something that he take care of, and you switched positions. You were supposed to come on September 11th, which is an ominous date in American history, but he's going to come on, and we're going to talk some conspiracy, so it's kind of fitting, and you were like, hey, I want to talk about, well, no, I think we were chatting, and you were like, yeah, I've experienced this. And I'm like, are you serious? And you were like, I was like, you want to talk about that? And you were like, let's talk about that. So
It was topical.
please do me a favor. Yeah, dude. Please do me a favor to people who do not know you, because I think it's the first time. Well, I mean, we have a pre-recorded episode that's going to be coming out, I think, in a week or two, which is a crazy story. Go ahead and get ready for that one, guys. It's an SEO 5 encounter that went really bad for Jim. Sorry, please do me a favor, and please introduce yourself and tell us where we can find you.
Right. So, as he said, my name is Jim. I go by Fisher of Spam here on YouTube, so hence the name and all that right there. I am Fisher of Spam's The Night's Watch on YouTube. That is my channel. And so far, I'm basically documenting everything in my encounter stories there. As everybody that I've sent a copy of my email to would refer to it as the book, because there's a lot. But
Are you you're planning on writing a book?
no. I'm saying that's what whenever I send my email that has like my
Oh,
experiences
yes.
all listed, people refer to it as the book because there's a lot, and I provide as many details as I can possibly do so, just in case it helps somebody, So
Yes, I received said email, and I was like, this. I didn't call it a book. I called it a long email, and you'd be like, please read it. I was like, okay, I'll read it, and I read. I'm gonna be honest with you, maybe 70% of it, and I was like, okay, I recognize this particular topic, which it's. I don't want to like spoil what we talked about, and we kind of hit it off from there. We've been, we have a little private group which you might have seen up there that I had to knock off real quick. I don't know how to pause that for the show. I'll get there eventually. And you'd like. We've had a lot of long discussions. We've had a lot of long takes and talks. We also do a show every so often. What's it called? Forum of the Forbidden. We do that with Magical Journey.
yes.
Speaking of Magical Journey, I will be on with him tomorrow in his first show. I don't know if that's going to be live or I don't know. I have to talk to him about it. I don't know if that's going to be live or not. And
Exciting either way.
either way, I'm going to be on with my buddy, and we talk about a lot of interesting subjects and topics. I think the one we did first was hidden history.
Mm-hmm.
And and then today you were like, I got your back, Tom. I was like, all right, buddy, let's go ahead and do this. And one more time, do me a favor. He just started out, guys. He's been actually helping me on the YouTube stuff. But please do me a favor. Right now, go over to his channel, like and subscribe for great content. All right, dude. So what are we going to get into? I'm over here stretching. I'm over here stretching.
All right. So let's get some good stretching in. All right. So I believe we're going to call this episode "The Devil is in the Details,"
That's what
and
it's called. Yes.
the reason is I'm going to recount for you guys some stories of exorcisms first. Now, these exorcisms I was there for. I was a participant in. And some of these little details are important to other fields of research, I guess you'd say. But I want y'all to kind of see them because after I go through all that, I'm going to recount my Dogman experience, and then we'll have a little discussion there, assuming
Yeah.
time allows.
Of
So,
course. Get your questions ready for Jim.
yep. All right. So, the first one I'm going to talk about is just going to be shorter. It's going to give you like a little bit of an overview, okay? So, a little bit of a background first. I am a Christian. I've grown up and still am Pentecostal. So, the ideas of spiritual warfare and casting out demons and all that kind of fun stuff was very prevalent, I guess you could say. We talk about that kind of stuff often. So, there's that. Hopefully, that doesn't ruffle any feathers. But if it does, sorry, not
If it
sorry.
does, it's too bad. I mean, everyone has their faith, and everyone has a
Right.
direction in which they have a connection with God.
That's
You
right.
know that I am not a Christian, but I know that you're a Pentecostal Christian, and we never had any crosswords. Our good buddy Magical is like what pagan Christian. Everyone
Right.
here is welcome as long as you're nice and suitable and open to other people's ideas and concepts. No need to be sorry about that, brother.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not. I'm just saying. Disclaimers, yada, yada.
Yeah, yeah.
But
For YouTube purposes.
sure. Why not? All right. So, all right. This happened when I was about, I'm going to say 17. All right. So, typically, when we know that somebody is demonically possessed, there'll be like some kind of signs. And for normally, and definitely in this case, what happened was a friend of mine, she had an outburst basically during a service. She'll like screamed really loud and kept screaming while the preacher was preaching, and then was sobbing and then ran out of the sanctuary. So that's usually a really good indication, like if it's something off like that. But since she was a friend of mine, I was like, well, let's go out there and see what's wrong, what's the issue, be a good friend, right? So I'm out there talking to her, and she's just unconsolable. I mean, just crying, screaming, and just pitching a fit. And it's just odd. It's like, what's wrong? You know, I can't understand what you're trying to say and get across to me. You're not making sense. Another friend of ours comes out, tries to talk, and it's the same thing. It's just fits, absolute fits. And we're like, uh-oh. I think I think this is more than just like a manic episode or something, right? So, right when we kind of come to that conclusion, our pastor walks out. And you'd have to just know the guy. I mean, he's the sweetest, most calm and soft-spoken person you've ever met. I mean, he's older guy. He looks a lot like Elvis Presley, and he's just as nice as can be. And I don't have enough nice things to say about him. But he comes strolling out, big old smile on his face, just radiating love off him, and just looks around and is like, well, looks like we have some problems going on out here. Y'all want to talk about it? And she just, same. Like, he's like, oh, I see. I'm not talking to
So and so.
her
Yeah.
name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, so demons. Okay. And he looks at me and my buddy, and he's like, well, boys, I hope y'all are ready for some praying because it's time to bring about some deliverance. Yep, let's do it.
Wow.
So we do. We start praying, and suddenly she becomes very combative. I mean, she is flailing, punching, kicking. She throws herself into the floor. So at this point, it's basically up to me and my buddy to hold her down so the pastor can do his thing while we do our best to pray and help as well. Now, my friend, he's, I don't know, 6'7", 6'8", 300 and some pounds at that time, like big old football player. I mean,
Yeah,
big. He's a
that's good.
mountain of a man.
Like an offensive lineman or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe he was a center, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, so he's got her pinned from the arms, holding her down so she doesn't hit anybody. And I'm holding her legs. Now, at the time, let me just say, I was no slouch. I'm not 300 pounds. I'm actually 150 pounds at my fighting weight in the best shape of my life at the time because I used to do mixed martial arts. I don't have the mass, but I have enough strength. But let me tell you what, this girl, 15, 16 years old, probably weighs 100 pounds soaking wet, is throwing me and this big old lineman around like we're just rag dolls. And
I've
it is,
heard of this before.
yes, it is everything in our power to try to refrain from, keep her from hurting all of us. But long story short, things start progressing, everything starts going good, and deliverance is had. Now, what happens is she starts to throw up.
Wow.
And yes, another person had come out, and the pastor had told him, hey, go get some napkins. So each time a demon was cast out of her, she threw up into a napkin. And this happened 10 times. Okay.
Oh my God.
Now, and I saw the contents of the napkins. Each and every single time that she threw up, it was a black goo. hmm Now, could that be smoker's lung?
At
Maybe.
15?
At 15, 16, I don't think it's quite progressed enough to be that. But
Even
I'll
if she
throw that
started
as a
smoking at,
disclaimer.
say, at 10. Even if she started smoking at 10, you wouldn't have smokers. And that's something you get in your, mid to late 40s. You know what I mean? That's
Right.
insane, dude. I've heard of that before. I was talking to my chiropractor, and he's Catholic, and we just kind of got into certain things. He's seen some things, and my lady too. But he was saying that it was like a 5-year-old girl that was possessed, and
Hmm.
I love your mug, by the way. Every time you pull it up, it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
And he's a big guy. He's like a little bit smaller than me, but he's not fat, but he's a big guy. And him and
hmm
somebody else were holding, and they couldn't. He said I could not hold her down, and that is so that's pretty, like, I guess, in lack of a better term, run of the mill for this kind of situation.
Yeah, pretty much. But eventually, that stops after 10. Everything's good. Everything's copacetic. She's crying, but this time it's more of relief and thankfulness, like, oh my gosh, she's
Wow.
delivered. She gives her life to Christ, all this fun stuff. And everything is great. She's hugging us. She's thanking us. Now, the pastor, he takes all the napkins and he puts them in a trash can and he hands it to my buddy. He's like, hey, take these outside and burn them. Okay. So he goes and does that. I'm in there and I'm still
Yeah.
chatting, me and the other friend that came out with the napkins, right? And everything's good. And we go home. But I talked to Michael. Well, that's his name, Michael. I talked to him the next day. I'm like, hey, man, so what happened with all that? Like, describe to me what happened when you burned it. He's like, man, it was the weirdest thing. He's like, I could hardly get those tissues to catch on fire. Like, it was almost impossible. He said, but when I finally did, they started burning purples and greens, and it sounded like the goo inside of them was screaming.
Oh
He
my
said,
God.
and yeah, he said, and once they caught, that happened, and then they burnt up completely. Not like ashy like you would normally see paper burn, but like fully. He
It
said it was the
just
strangest thing.
completely dissipated. I'd imagine it
Yeah.
was heartening to get it started, not to be like a, you know, to be a to play devil's advocate. Pardon the pun. That they were, damp, wet.
I mean, you would think, I guess, but I wouldn't imagine. From what I saw of the contents, it wasn't the whole napkin. I mean, it's not like you're
Okay,
vomiting and emptying out your entire stomach contents. No, it was.
okay,
I mean, it was more like a giant, well, not giant, but like a good sized wad in each one, and the rest of it was
okay,
dry. So
okay. So like a loogie or like a lunger or whatever you want to call it. Okay,
yeah, yeah.
that's odd.
And
All
keep
right.
in mind, while these things are coming out, also another detail is once they start coming out, when she begins screaming and talking and whatever she's saying, it's not in her voice. Voice is changed completely. So,
Like what you would say, like what a different tone or a different candor or a different like way of speaking in which you're normally accustomed to,
well,
or
if she
all three.
starts off like, "Hi, my name is yada 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 and yada yada yada," and then all of a sudden it goes to,
Oh my god,
you
a
know,
metal singer like myself. All right.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah.
Wow, that's
So,
that's insane. That's so crazy.
mhm. It was, but all ended up being well and everything was great. So, but that keep that in mind of, that little detail. I mean, it's not really going to pertain too much as far as like the black goo goes further as we go. But
Okay.
but the thing I want to emphasize in that particular story is how this little girl is strong enough to move me and my friend in the way that she was able to do. Like that should not be possible. At the
Right.
legs, me at 150 at that time, yes, but uh,
Yeah.
not as
Still though.
much. Yeah, not as much. And especially not the 300 some odd pound lineman. There's no way. There's no way. So keep that in mind, okay? Now I'm going to go to the next story that I witnessed. There's others, but these are like the notable two. So the next one happens to an ex girlfriend of mine, actually. So I don't remember exactly the details of the situation entirely. I know that we had just got through a church service. Everything had just got done. It was a great service and all that. And we were, lights had come on and we were talking and chit chatting, just doing normal teenage stuff at the time. And she said something to me while I was turned around that I just didn't quite understand. So I was like confused and I turned around and I said, "What?" And she said something again, but I didn't understand it again. It was kind of muffled in a strange way.
Right.
But that could also be because I couldn't pay attention to her words at that time. The reason is because she had the craziest looking grin on her face that I think I've ever seen. Think of like the Cheshire cat, right? Like
Okay.
smiling in a way that was just unnatural.
I've seen
And
that before. I've seen it in a paranormal video. I don't know if
yeah,
it's pretty famous. They were doing. I don't remember where it was. I think it was somewhere in England actually,
hmm
and it might have even been in the States. I don't remember exactly where it was. That was another one I was thinking of, but it was in the States. Oh, no, England. Excuse me. And there were video. There was a videotape. From outside of the whole room.
right.
There was a woman talking, and then all of a sudden, like her face just changed into this
hmm
large smile, and then her nose became like very pointy, and like she looked like she was like possessed. And they called into
hmm
the room and they said, "Hey, you need to get out of there." Like to the girl, and she like just ran out and looked at the video and was completely dumbfounded by the way she said, "I felt strange, but I didn't
Yep.
know that my entire face had changed." It's a wild video. If I find it, I'll show you guys.
Oh, I 100% believe it because that's pretty
Oh
much
yeah.
what was going on here. So,
Okay.
like I said, crazy, unnatural grin. But the stranger part about it was her eyes had changed. Normally, they were brown eyes, but suddenly they've turned color and they are like the iciest ice blue, almost white, the irises. And her
Wow.
pupils, instead of being round like normal, are slitted up like a cat.
Oh my
Or
God! So she was like a shapeshifter or something, like
yes,
a like a reptilian.
she was shifting. And I was like freaked out. That
No
that
kidding.
that might have been why I didn't understand the word, but yeah, so like
Yeah, of course.
I was just like,
Yeah,
"Oh my god," cuz it was something innocuous like, "Well, what'd you think about the service?" You know, it was
that's innocuous.
it was something like that.
This is your definition of innocuous.
Yeah, sure. Right. But yeah, so I'm just like, "Oh my god." And normally I'm not like too freaked out about seeing this side of things because like I said, it's kind of normal for us to like experience these things, but having something just right there and change basically before my eyes, my brain wasn't able to wrap around it in time, right? So I'm like backing away. I'm like, "Oh no." And then I, I believe the way it went down was one of the youth leaders had saw it and was like, "Okay, well, it's time to cast out a demon," right? And for whatever reason, I don't know the why, her command to us was, "Okay, all the boys get out of the sanctuary, girls stay behind. We're gonna be fighting some demons tonight." So I'm like, "Okay, okay, I want to go. I want to go." So I'm walking out, and I turn around and I look to see what's going on as I'm walking out. And what I saw from her was she had moved completely to the opposite side of our sanctuary there, and she was walking on all fours. And what strikes me about it is it's not like how you see somebody bear crawling and it looks kind of awkward, right?
That's odd.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that.
I'm not
In
going to jump the
fact,
gun on that. I'm not going to jump the gun on that. I'm going to let you do that when you get to where you're going. But that's very odd.
yes, but her body had kept continued to change. It looked like her shoulder blades had completely disconnected off of her body and were now sticking straight up like a cat as she
Right,
walked on all fours. So now instead of looking like a goofy person walking on their hands and feet, it she looks like a graceful cat slinking away. You know, and picture like in your head for some odd reason, I don't know why, but for me it's always I picture a cheetah when I think about this. Think about a cheetah on Nat Geo or whatever, and you see them walk and you see those shoulder blades are like triangles sticking up, doing
right.
this as it walks. That is exactly what is happening here. The human body cannot do that normally. That just does not work. And so she is slinking away, moving gracefully, trying to hide and weave herself in between the drum set and move away.
Now, when you say your sanctuary, Jim, you're talking about your church, correct?
Correct. Correct.
And this has happened at least, you said there was other times, at least twice at the church itself.
Oh yeah, it's happened a lot.
Okay, so so what do you think that is? Do you think like maybe because I know the Pentecostal is very much into the Holy Spirit. Do you think when the Holy Spirit is now entering the sanctuary, that when
Mhm.
someone's bringing something in or something's attaching to them, that then that is like being forced forward for everyone to see, or what do you think that is?
Well, I mean, I would say that the light does a good job of removing the darkness. And if the darkness doesn't want to be removed, it's going to put up a fight, which is why I
Fair
say,
enough. Fair
usually
enough.
there's some kind of outburst at some point in time that would signify, you know, red flag, you know.
Right. Right.
So,
It's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And, like I said, for us, it's not that big of a deal because, spiritual warfare is taught very heavily. So, I mean, we're very much in tune with that kind of stuff. So there's that.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, Evil can't stand to be in the presence of God, and when one or two are gathered in my name, behold, I am there amongst them, right? So there's that. But anyways, I don't know exactly how things go down in there. I would like to find out maybe someday, but I'm certainly not going to interview my ex-girlfriend. That would be a bad idea. I like to
Yeah.
live. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Jim is
But
very sly in saying I'm married and his wife would. But
yes, I am
it
a
makes
happily
complete and utter
married
sense,
spam.
even if you weren't married. Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Even if you weren't married, you were single. Single
Right.
man.
Meh, yeah.
Let's just say you were. That would still be an odd thing to do. It would still be very uncomfortable.
Sure. But anyways,
Fair enough.
everything works out great. She comes out, she's sobbing, she's so happy, she's so relieved, yada yada. And things are great. But I will note that her back was very sore and she wanted, her back rubbed in a way that wasn't bad. So I was able to take care of that.
Yeah.
But when I talked to her the next day and was like, asking her about like how she felt, because I didn't want to like bring up trauma that seemed like not the move. But I was just like, hey,
Yes,
are,
I
are you
agree with
feeling
you.
okay? Are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm a little sore. Turns out my back is bruised pretty bad. I was like, yeah, I could see that. I could see that. But anyways, yeah, generally speaking, everything's good. Everything's copacetic. Life goes on. Interesting story. But the point to that I want to draw attention to as far as where I go after this is that a lot of people, when they bring up the subject of Dogman, you know, they're like, it can't be a werewolf. Like, that's just not possible. Lichens aren't a thing. The human body can't take that kind of stress. Well, I would agree with you if you want to divorce yourself from the idea of the supernatural playing a role, because discounting that would be, taking away and belittling almost everything. And when it comes to life, I mean, supernatural stuff happens all the time,
Of course.
you know, and we can't, you can't take away from that, or else you're going to be ultimately taking away from God. I mean, we are supernatural beings, right? And He created us. So something such as a demon that you know would have knowledge of how to do supernatural things, because let's not forget, demons were once upon a time angels. Well, some. I mean,
So,
the whole disembodied spirit of the Nephilim thing. But either way, their parents would have told them, because their parents, if that's the case, right? Their parents would have been like, "Hey, I was there at creation. This is how things went down. This is how that works. Can we do that? Well, technically, we're spiritual beings, so we can do stuff like that. It's not going to be a perfect copy, which is a clue to what we hear a lot when it comes to skinwalkers.
mm.
Like, they change, but it's not perfect. Same kind of thing. That's the same kind of
or,
direction that I'm going.
or like when you hear about people describe Bigfoot making animal sounds. I heard an owl, or
Right.
I heard XYZ, a coyote, or something like that. It's always described as being slightly off. It's
It's
slightly
always
like,
off.
I heard this, I would recognize it, and I would say it is this, but there was something unusually strange about that. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, there's always a little bit of uncanny valley going on when it comes to this stuff, right? Besides like the overall experience of it
Yes.
being like odd and disconcerting, but there's also that little thing that's like, I don't know what it is, but it's just, yeah, no. So, you know, but yeah, that's where I want to go with that, is keep that in mind, because, well, I mean, I'm not going to be stand up here and be like, hey, all dog man, lichens, werewolves. Yeah, no, I'm not going to say 100% of the time that is the
No, I
case.
don't agree with that either. I don't believe that either.
Right. But what I will say
No, I
is,
wouldn't
if
think so
if
either.
if I literally watched my ex-girlfriend pretty much turn into some kind of demon cat thing, let's not, you know, lose the baby in the bathwater here. Like there's an element here that can play a role because we hear a lot of stories about occults and stuff like that and people that do dark magic. There's the skinwalker thing. There's also the whole, I mean, they just call themselves werewolves in these occults, right? And they talk about it too. I mean, one of the paths in the Church of Satan is to be a werewolf. I mean, you've got to go through this crazy ritual that I don't know the details of, but I know that one of them is where you have to like basically break your fingers every single day until you have like these big gnarly hands or something like that. I mean, that's a thing. I- What happens after? Can they actually pull that change off? Well, I know at least one demon that was not perfectly possessing somebody could do what I saw. If you were perfectly possessed, how much more can be accomplished?
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow.
Maybe. I know an interesting account is in the book He Came to Set the Captives Free. First of all, very hard book to read. If you're empathetic at all and you hear some of the craziness that goes on that's described, it will hurt you, but you will learn much. But, anyways, one of the stories that she talks about is she's basically under constant attack from these cult people, right?
Okay.
It's a satanic cult. I can't remember what it's called. I want to say that she refers to it as the Brotherhood or something like that.
Okay.
But anyway, at one point in time, she's driving somewhere and is on in the middle of the country somewhere, and then all of a sudden her car stops in the middle of the road out of nowhere, and a werewolf walks out from the tree line and starts talking to her in perfect English and says, "Look what I just did to you. I am now going to kill you because my master has sent me. You've been a thorn in our side, and this
Oh
ends
my God.
today. I'm going to kill you and I'm going to eat you and enjoy every minute of it." Well, she's already been through a lot at this point. And
Yeah.
she's like, "No, no, you're not." Starts rebuking it in the name of Jesus,
That
and the
reminds
thing
me.
flees.
That reminds me. It sounds so odd. That so reminds me of Little Red Riding Hood. I know that sounds. They may not be parallel, but that's the
Maybe the
first thing that
German
popped in.
version.
Yeah, there's the Little Red Riding Hood goes to the house, and then there's the wolf dressed up as the grandmother with big eyes, with big teeth, and what better to eat you with? It's a wolf saying to a girl that I'm going to eat you.
Yeah,
That's the first thing that popped in my head because German folklore, there's a lot of that back there. There's a lot of witches and
right.
it's all throughout. If you go to any like amusement park there, they'll have like a little place where it
Hmm.
has like German folklore stuff, and of course
Right.
Hansel and Gretel with witches and all that. But just when you said it, that liken, that dogman, werewolf, whatever we would like to call it, jumped out and
Right.
said, "I'm going to eat you." That's the first thing that popped in my head. It makes me wonder if some of these folk stories that we tell our kids have some basis in reality.
Well, I mean, I mean, the folklore goes back how far? I mean, it's ever
Oh,
since recorded
hundreds of
history we
years.
got this stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we can pick out whatever we want to, Anubis and all that. I mean, there's the moral of that is there's plenty, and it stretches back forever. Why? Why is this a reoccurring theme? Why are we hearing about it still to this day if it's just stories? You know, maybe, maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, but
I
fair
don't
enough.
know.
I mean, still at the same time, that's really terrifying. I mean, like, so are you? We were talking about the different types of dogmen because I've heard ones that look, like the ones that everyone probably knows with the long snout, looks like a German Shepherd, but it looks like they say people say this the knees are backwards, but it's just if you ever look at a dog, like its
Mm-hmm.
knees kind of protrude anyway. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's the kind that kind of like go in and out of like like cloaking. And then
Yeah,
there's the
yeah.
kind that look like bulldogs. I interviewed
Mm,
Bettina Moss a year back, and she was
yeah.
saying hers looked like if you remember Spike from Tom and
Mm-hmm.
Jerry, it looked like a big black spike.
Yeah, I saw
And
the rendering of her picture of it. Yeah, it's interesting.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, which makes me wonder, like, some of it is maybe what you're saying is some type of demonic skinwalker, maybe of
Mm-hmm.
something in the forest or even a person. And
Maybe.
some of them might be like a military, like,
Mm-hmm.
like a thing that they do sometimes, where they take these
Yeah.
animals and maybe somehow render them to be that.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting.
It makes me wonder, like, as far as this whole skinwalker idea goes, if you're doing some black magic somewhere and you're in an area, like, let's just say, for instance, where Bettina is out there, well, over here in Alabama, like me.
Alabama, yeah.
Yeah. So if you don't have access to finish your skinwalker type ritual to a wolf, what are you going to do? I mean, what's your choices? Like here, I guess our choice would be
House
coyote,
pets, house pet, yeah.
fox, or maybe somebody's big gnarly pit bull. I
Right,
mean,
right. That's interesting. What a very interesting take on that, dude.
yeah.
That's very interesting. So you're saying like they're doing some black magic,
Hmm.
conjuring up something and combining it with the animals that are in the region. So if you're in, because you hear like a lot about like dogmen, you'll hear them pretty much everywhere. But
Hmm.
like in the north, they seem to be a little bit more wolf-like, and in the south, that's it. I never even thought about that. That's an interesting point of view.
Yeah, it
That's
makes me
interesting.
wonder. I don't know if such a thing exists, but if there is such a job title as wolf broker or wolf breeder, maybe you could contact one of them and be like, "Hey, talk to me about your sales. Do you guys have weird folks that come and buy them? You know,
Everybody with
super edgy
long
guys."
black hats that are bent in the middle, and they have like they kind of smell bad and have a long beard. Is
Yeah.
anybody showing up at your residence here?
Do they all do they all look like super edge lords? I don't know. Just a theory. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
we're
I
just
would
we're
be
just beating
interested
around
to
the
know.
bush. We're beating around the bush.
Right,
Wow.
right.
So,
So I
yeah, go ahead, man.
I would never have like even had this thought had I had not had a dogman experience myself that made me wonder.
Okay.
All right. So I'm at work and I'm working night shift. And I just kind of learn about the topic of dogmen. So I'm listening to podcasts about it for a couple nights in a row.
Mm.
But one night is the last break of the night, and I'm outside hanging out with a couple friends, and this big old dog walks up and just basically wants to hang out with us. And I'm like, I'm not really like freaked out by it because in my mind it's registering as some kind of a husky or mix of husky or something like that. But it's a really, really big dog
I think we
that
talked
looks
about
very
this.
wolfish.
I
Yeah,
think we
we may
talked
have.
about this. Yes.
But I was like, okay, interesting. And we pet on the dog. We feed it beef jerky and tater chips and stuff like that. It's got a collar on. We call the owner, and it's like this 14, 15-year-old kid riding around Arab, Alabama at 10 o'clock at night with his apparently wolf dog. You know, why do you want to be on a bicycle with a wolf dog at that age? I don't know. Maybe he's trying to be a super edge lord. I don't know. But he's like, oh, yeah, thanks, guys. She broke off the leash. And this leash was a freaking chain. I mean, a chain. I was like, dang, okay. So don't think much of it. And then it happens again the next night. And it happens again the next night. And it's the same thing each and every time, except for on that last night. He comes and gets her, takes off, whatever. And now my shift is over and I'm walking to the car. And headphones in, listen to podcast about Dogman. And then all of a sudden, I feel that pressure change. That some
Allegedly, allegedly,
allegedly,
he does not drive around with headphones. That's alleged.
I'm walking to the car. I'm still in the parking lot. After that, allegedly. But
And then he
anyway,
Bluetoothed into a stereo. That's what he
yes,
did.
then I Bluetooth it to the
Alleged.
speakers and all that. But anyways, so I
Yeah, yeah,
feel
yeah,
that
yeah. You're
pressure
professional.
change coming from behind me, and it's like, what is that? And then all of a sudden, I hear the clickety clackety of claws on pavement running at me. And so I'm used to this pressure change. I know that it means bad. I'm listening to Dogman. I'm freaked out. So the atmosphere of what's going on with me at the moment is like primed, right? So I'm freaked out. I jump up,
Right.
I spin around in midair. I land in a full karate stance like I'm still 17, like ready to try to not die. And it was the wolf dog. And she skitters away, with a tail between her legs, and I feel awful. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, girl, whatever her name was. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Come here, come here. Let me apologize. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I'm just being super friendly to this thing and petting on it and loving on it, apologizing profusely. And all of a sudden, I just start feeling bad about its situation. I'm like, look, I'm sorry, your owner apparently
Okay.
doesn't care enough about you to keep up with you and treat you right. I would take you home with me if I could, but I just got a dog and I can't. I can't. Oh, I'm sorry, girl. So I start to get in the car, and this thing is just right there on me. Now, before, it didn't really have much to do with me. Maybe because I didn't have beef jerky. I don't know. But now it wants everything to do with me. Like it's trying to get into the car with me. I'm like, no, no, no. I'm pushing her out, pushing her out. Finally, I get her out, close the door, and start driving. And from where I'm at, I mean, this thing is just running circles around my car like it's nothing. I can't lose this thing until I reach maybe 45 miles an hour.
Oh my god.
Eh, Yeah. I was like, okay, okay. Weird, but it's not clicking in my head of how weird the situation actually was, right?
Right.
So I start driving home. I'm not far away from my house. I'm about 10, 15 minutes away from home. Now, what's important to understand is from my house to get to Arab, I have to go north before I can turn and go back southwest. If I was able to draw a line west from there, or from my house west to Arab, this thing running quickly would have easily have been able to catch me before I got to where I was.
Okay.
So as I'm going down the road and still listening to these podcasts, I noticed something on the side of the road. It's very large and it's sitting next to a fence that's right in front of this Latino couple's house. They raised like sheep and goats and stuff there. So there's a big
Okay.
fence. It's about 5 foot tall. And I'm like, what in the world is that? I get closer, I get closer. I have the high beams on and I'm slowing down because I'm like, what is that? Well, sitting on the ground is exactly what I'm listening to on this podcast. It is a dog, man. It's got all the classic features. It's got long legs, long arms, human type body, big wolfish looking head, and it is sitting down in the grass next to this fence underneath this light. I've got it in the high beams too. I can see every single detail of this thing. And as it is sitting, this 5 foot fence is coming up to right here on this creature as it's sitting on its butt.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So, needless to say, I'm pretty freaked out. I'm not like losing my skull out of fear about this because it's more of like the disbelief of what I'm seeing and
Right.
listening to at the same time is like shocking me out of the fear I probably should be experiencing. Because I'm like, this time I'm like slowing down. I'm yelling at this thing, like, how are you there? I'm literally listening to you right here. What is happening? Is this chicken or egg situation? What is going? How? That's what's going on in my car. And once I finally get back in my right state of mind and put my foot on the accelerator and go and get past it, and I'm still like, oh my God, what just happened? It dawned on me. The details that matter the most in this sighting is the fact that the coloration of this thing was the exact same coloration of the wolf dog. Exactly.
At the job. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Exactly.
strikes me about it the most? You know what strikes me about it the most is that I don't know what there's a certain term for it. I can't remember the name of it, but it's some type of theory that if the more you think about something, the
Mm-hmm.
more the probability of it existing. You didn't know anything about
Mm.
Dogman. You
Right.
started listening to it, and
Mm-hmm.
then it shows up at your job. That's what strikes me heavily
Yeah.
about it. I mean, I was waiting for you to finish. That for me was I was like, what does that even mean?
Right.
What does that even
And
mean? That you did I didn't know about it until I got over here in Mexico. It's not a thing in Europe. No one
mm-hmm.
talked about. I mean, there's werewolves and things like that, and the old stuff,
Right.
silver bullets and all that, but not Dogman. I was like, what are you talking about this Dogman stuff? And then you
Right.
start, I get into this, into this world, and then I hear about, the more people believe in something, the more it then can manifest itself.
Mm-hmm.
That right there is part and parcel to what you're talking about. That's
Right.
insane to me.
So, like, my line of thinking on it is, it's to me, it's one of two things. Well, maybe one of three, but either there are forces, for lack of a better term, paying attention to me at the time, paying attention to what I'm listening to, and thinking, hey, I want to mess with them. This seems like a great way of doing it. Bada
Okay,
bing, bada boom. Or, or
very likely.
what I saw was a lichen, an actual werewolf. So if what I know about Arab is it's got a huge occultic population. They're all into that. What if somebody is doing their skinwalker-ish ritual
Uh
before
huh.
they can do so and properly manifest? They have to then go through some kind of humiliation type ritual so they can be somebody's pet giant dog riding around with a 14-year-old on a bike.
Mm.
And then once they break loose and they feel like, and they say, oh, wait, here's a victim that almost took me home. Let's see if I can't exploit this more. What if that was the case? Or
I don't know.
it was, or it could have just been right place, right time. The wolf dog that looked exactly like it, color wise, had nothing to do with it. And it's just hanging out, wanting to
Yeah,
snack on a
that's
goat. I
does
don't know.
any part of you think? I mean, because if we are supernatural, I mean, just us, right? You
Mm-hmm.
were saying about God and supernatural.
Right.
The supernatural then therefore can become the natural. Do you think there's a possibility that it's just some type of natural occurrence?
Naturally speaking, in my situation, I don't think so.
Natural speaking.
I think I think it's one of the first two scenarios that I laid
I
out.
think it's most definitely. I think it's most definitely a being a man of your faith and your strong will and devotion to God and Jesus and all that, and then coming across this, and then maybe you take that and then you combine it with that area. Maybe the two combined are
Right.
more of the probability of that happening. So
Right.
what does that make you feel like? So when people are talking about the 401 or people are talking about, I mean, uh, you know, trying to make sure I took lightly on this. I mean, I was talking to Bettina Moss, and she was talking about, where these people are they're being found unalived,
Mhm.
in on the roadside, and like like in the autopsy reports, they're being like just completely like dismantled, like mutilated, and like I think something like 30 or 40% of the mass of the person is missing.
Right.
Like, are these are these on the upsweep? Is there something manifesting? Is there something maybe revelations like happening, or is it just the sign of the times? What do you think it is? Coming from the point of view, in your worldview.
I think that when you look at it, like broadly speaking, it's all the above. I think it depends. I think it's very possible to be a couple things. One, like I was saying about the whole occult angle, is one, it could be a hit job for them. Somebody turned the wolves loose on them. Two, it could be, for all we know, somebody's family member, and this was like the skinwalker type ritual that has to happen.
Hmm.
Or three, it was the more, beast of the field thing, not fearing man so much thing that happens. I mean, it could be either or
Hmm.
because I'm not sure. I would say that spiritually speaking, I don't know how something that would be a demon slash chimera from, like, say, that time period of back in the day. I don't know how that could manifest and have legal right to, at that point, take your life. That seems to me more like a slightly more free will aspect of a human mind that would be allowed to do whatever the heck it wanted.
Okay.
But I don't know the answer. But I think to sum it up, I would just say all the above. It's all on the table.
Wow. So when you say a cult, like this is burning my mind because I know that a cult always seems to have some type of like bad or evil type connotation attached to it. But the definition of a cult is the unknown or the unseen or the hidden.
Hidden,
And
yeah.
at one time, because of what was happening in Europe, in the Roman Empire,
Mhm.
actually the Christian faith was an occult faith because it had to
At
be
some point.
hidden. It
Right.
had to be hidden because of fear of persecution and things like that. So when you mean a cult, what is happening in this area? What have you heard?
Well, I know that there's a big Satanist slash Wiccan bunch of folks that live in that general area. Not to get all, satanic panic on you, everybody, I mean, it's not necessarily like that, but there is a lot of that goes down there, and it has for a very long time. Like, I talked to a friend of mine who grew up there, and he was in his 50s. I was like, hey, man, I've noticed that there's a lot of edgy folks that we work with. Has this place always been that weird? And he was like, oh,
Wow.
dude, you have no idea. He's like, man, you'd get scared to death as a kid. Like, when I was growing up, I'd be scared to death listening to the scanner and hearing the police calls go on out to the graveyard because the people are out there in robes burning things and killing critters and disemboweling them and throwing them all over the place. He's like, that was almost nightly here at one point in time. He's like, there is
That is weird.
some weird
That
folks.
is
Now,
weird.
I worked with a couple of weird ones, and eventually I got to be pretty friendly with them. And I didn't think that all of them were involved, but there was plenty of times where I was like at the gas station or at the Walmart, and I
Uh,
encountered them, and I was just like, "Oh, brother, I can feel that from here. What the heck are you doing over there?" Like, there's some bad
wow.
juju.
Yeah, we had that
So,
too in a place called Ellicott City, which is outside of Baltimore. It's
mhm.
near the Patapsco State Park, and I remember hearing a lot of satanic rituals going out there at this place called the Hell House, which was an
Mm,
old mental institution, and there's a lot of like altars and a lot of weird stuff they were finding up in the hills, like in the mid '90s. So,
mm.
but that could also be part of the satanic panic too, as well. I think when did that actually happen? What was that at? That was that was in
Hey,
Memphis. That was in Memphis, the Memphis Three. It's a very famous case
yeah,
of satanic ritual and things of that nature as well.
right.
The same, that was a thing, but it could also be a cover up too. Like I was I don't know if I talked to you about this or not. But do you remember like back in the day? Like I'm a big metal fan. You know what I mean? I don't really get into like I like just like let's stand up and fight or be together or against the power kind of stuff. That's more my my
Right.
my, my take on music in general. It could be even hip hop. But I remember back in the day, like in the '80s, you had like Slayer, all these bands that were like pretty occultish and dark and things of that nature, which I've known my whole life. I've actually seen Slayer live and all that. But hip hop is used to be like fight the power, we're oppressed, and now it's gone. Not even just super sexual like in the '90s. It's gone beyond that, and is now topped like metal and being like satanic and like all the symbolism that you see, all
Yeah.
the it's like ritual like sacrifice stuff that you see like the MTV Music Awards like Lady Gaga and all this. And I
Oh yeah.
being a professed former atheist, I would just think I would kind of look at it and go, oh, they're just being silly or whatever. But the
Edgy.
more like you get into what they claim to be edgy, edgy and like in the old days would be like Tom Green. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's funny.
Right.
Dude, that's edgy. That's funny. You know what I mean? Or I
Right.
can't think of the new guy. He had a weird movie. It was like, what is this? Where he gets attacked by a bear or a squirrel or whatever it was.
Okay.
Andre, I think Andre something. Or I can't think of his name right now. That's edgy, but it's
Okay.
not edgy. Like the more you get into this world that you and I are in, I'm just more of a
Hmm.
purveyor of stories. You're the one who has the stories. And once again, thanks for coming on and
Oh
sharing
yeah. No
those with
problem.
us. Yeah. Uh, but what happens is that the more you see what's going on in the world and you see what's happening, you realize there is a true force of evil.
Yeah.
It's real. It's palpable. It's it's
Hmm.
it's it's so in your face now that there has to
Yeah.
be a force for good.
Hmm.
And the message that I know, my limit. We've known each other for like a month, like something like that now. You would show up, occasionally on my live feed every
Yeah.
Wednesday, folks, at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And I love putting in shameless plugs, especially when they're intentionally funny. Is that you're trying to shed light on the world, like a positive light on the world. And
Right.
every time you come on here, I always feel better because of it. And I want to
Oh well.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming on today and helping me out in a bind like always. And I also extend an invitation to you as well. At least to co-host with you. I do have a few stories myself that have, that you can
Hmm.
also find on my channel. But
Yeah.
especially that one that happened to me recently out there in the middle of nowheres in the middle of Central America. That was weird. Um, but thank you so very much for coming on. And one more time, please promote your channel so that people can find you.
Sure. Well, if you liked my stories and you want to hear some more, I am at Fisher of Spam's The Night's Watch on YouTube. So
That's
like and
Paul's
subscribe,
channel.
please.
Please, let's see. That's my Facebook page. I'm going back up through here. Counter Fisher Spans Night Watch. Boom. He's just starting out, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go over and give him a
See.
welcoming hand. A helping hand. He's a cool cat. He's new to all this, and he's still learning. He's still learning the ropes. He has a few questions for me
Yes.
to kind of help him out a little bit on, but he has his own way he's going to be doing things, and he has a lot of his stories already up. And do me a favor as well as Jim a favor and like and subscribe to his channel. Any parting words before you leave out of here, buddy? Maybe a message of hope about what's happening, especially in this cycle that's coming up here. All this craziness that they want to put out there.
Ah, I don't really have anything special really to say. Just say, hey guys, I got some stories. Come listen. Pretty soon, very very soon, I'm gonna have some guests. And
Ooh,
plus, if you like Tom and me, you're gonna like Magical, and we do a cool little get together once every 2 weeks, and ride on this train as it goes off the rails on whatever subject we're talking on, and it's a good
all right,
time. So come and
it's true.
hang,
Well,
come and
the cool
hang.
thing about that, a cool thing about that show, it's called what's it called again?
Form
It's
of the
new, so
Forbidden.
it's Form of the Forbidden. It's really cool. So you get Jim's Christian perspective, You get Magical's pagan perspective, and you get my New Age perspective, or whatever you want to call me, whatever I am. And it's always fun. And
Yeah.
we're going to have to like start going into that again. I think we have one coming up next week. We have to figure out what we're going to talk about.
Oh yeah.
If
Yeah.
it's every
You
if it's
got a
every
plan.
2 weeks, this week is off. Next week is on again. And I think this time we're
Ooh,
going to be on Magical's channel. Hopefully he's ready for that. I will be on
nice.
his show tomorrow. So go over there and check that out. And we're going to talk about, I think, the genesis of my show and some of the podcast
Mhm.
moments that I've had so far on this interesting journey. And Jim, one more time, thank you so very much for coming on.
My honor.
All right, buddy. I'll see you. I'll see you
Yeah,
in
all
the
right.
green room.
Love y'all.
Love you guys. So that was my buddy Fisher Spam. One more time, go over and check out his channel. I don't know if he has a Facebook page. I had to actually ask him that. Hold on, let's bring him back on there. Jim, you have a Facebook page?
No,
Not yet.
working on it.
That's where people need to convene to share thoughts and ideas. We'll get you there. With Jim, he will be making a, sorry to put you on the spot, hopefully a Facebook page soon enough. Anyhow, see you in a second. That's the first time I've done that. Anyhow, if you like the show, please do me a favor, like and subscribe to the channel. You can find me on Rumble. You can find me on Spotify. And remember, you are watching the Eye Jupiter podcast. I love each and every one of you. And remember, we are the Eye, and we are aware.